What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, it's time to respond to some questions that were asked under this video right here, the 1150 hour dreaming Spanish review, because apparently I said a whole heap of stuff and you guys still have a whole heap of questions, so I'm going to answer those as of now in this video. This is almost becoming a mini series where every DS update then needs an update for the update, just to kind of clarify my thoughts. And I guess because I was not in the greatest of headspaces when I made this video, not to say that my opinions or ideas have suddenly changed, it's just I was pissed when making that video, okay? Because my experiences in no way line up the roadmap. I'm just going to say that, okay? Now, first up, the first comment is this one right here. I literally pinned this because this just validated my own thoughts and feelings on the whole experiment so far. But I'm going to go through a bunch of these top comments, give you a summary of my thoughts around this matter, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the roadmap. Vamos. Evildea, don't give up. I can't even pronounce my own name. Keep the experiment going. Lower your listening hours, raise your speaking hours. Your comprehension has improved a lot. I should aim for 100 to 150 speaking hours. First up, I'm about to go to China for in 3 weeks. I will actually go and I'll be there for over a month. So I'm not going to have time to be doing tutoring while I'm over there. Okay. So the best you can hope for me during the next 50-hour update is more of me just watching content and in fact less speaking hours just due to the fact I'm overseas, okay? Whether I will continue after I get back and, do this, I will decide all of that when I get back. I'm kind of over it at this stage. I will decide at that point. At the moment, I'm just kind of trudging along and I'm trying to change my mindset around this whole thing. And I'll talk about the mindset part in a moment, okay? What you've said here is you've done well. You've only got 350 hours to go before you hit the 1,500 hours. That will be the end of the experiment, right? Yes, that would be the end of the experiment as an ALG experiment. At that point, it would just swap to me just learning Spanish, okay? Unless something absolutely bizarre happens with my ALG experience and suddenly I'm like, wow, this is amazing now, then I would keep it going, indefinitely, but highly doubtful. And the reason why I'm heavily considering, stopping right now is simply due to the fact that 1,500 hours, nothing will change. Like, yeah, I may progress, I may understand better, I may speak better, even if I get 100 to 150 hours. But no matter what I do at that point, everyone has already made up their mind. They either think, one thing about dreaming Spanish or one thing about me, and, my misuse of the methodology and testing or in some way I've failed, okay, basically. No hearts and minds are going to be changed. Now, from a scientific point of view, I guess, or like an experimental point of view, that shouldn't really factor in, but it has to factor in because this is 350 hours of my life, okay? Now, I know a bunch of you might be thinking, well, Evildea, if you do the 1,500 hours, then we'll know exactly what's attainable by that point. Yeah, that's true, but it's pretty obvious at this point to me what's going to be attainable. But if you guys really want, maybe. Again, this goes back to that mindset shift I've been thinking about, okay? Some of you have also said, hey, Evildea, why don't you do an exam at the 1,500 hours? And when I first set on this whole experiment, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Because people have been mentioning this for a long time. But now that I'm getting closer and I've done this whole ALG thing, I can already see what anyone who wants to discredit me will say. They'll say, can't test ALG with a CEFR exam because you don't know grammar. And a CEFR exam contains grammar questions. Therefore, you're going to fail, and it's not a good reflection of your actual abilities. Your actual abilities is what you can talk with natives, whatnot. And I'd have to agree with them in some ways, because ALG doesn't teach you grammar. If you actually go on the purist route, you will not recognize grammar. You'll recognize some aspects of it if you know grammar via other languages like Esperanto and Chinese and stuff, but like, you won't be able to put a finger on it and say, this is specifically. It's like when you speak to a native and you ask them, why does the language work this way? And they're just like, well, I don't know, it just is, Like, that's pretty much going to be it when it comes to testing. So, like, doing a test would be great to give you guys, I guess, an insight, but again, it wouldn't properly be reflective of, what you can understand and express. I think realistically, the best thing to do with the 1,500 hours would be for me to sit down and do an hour-long video in Spanish where I sit there and I have a conversation and we try to cover as many topics as possible. And then you guys can do your own personal assessment and we just allow the community literally to do a polyglot investigation on me. That would probably be the best way because doing grammar tests not very reflective of the methodology. Okay, this person said that my videos have helped them realize that the time that they spent in school plus flashcard speaking, all that. It really helped them because they thought it was mainly CI, but like that really helped. I feel like this is that 80-20 rule again, where 80% of your time should be spent, actively engaged with the language, primarily via CI, but speaking and stuff like that as well. And then 20% of your time should be on study. This is not a universal rule. It depends where you are at in the journey. I think like you should do way more study at the beginning, as opposed to like when you're at the intermediate level. But if you don't do that part, you're really hamstringing yourself. Like I can feel it. Like I have when I want to use a verb that I've never used before, I say every iteration of the verb I can possibly imagine and hope the person who's listening knows what I'm saying. And then they will generally go, oh, you mean blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if I mean blah, blah, blah. They say I mean blah, blah, blah. So I say that, okay? But maybe they are misunderstanding me, telling me to use this. And I think what they're telling me to use is that. Like, it's really hard when you've got like, a great example is I was in crosstalk and I was like, no sé, no sabes? Sabes? ¿Se? Sabes? Like, I didn't know in that situation what to say. I've heard both so many times in the exact same situation, I think. So like, I don't know. And like, then my crosstalk partner, he was like, sabes. I was like, okay, sabes. I hope it's sabes. Like, that's just an example, okay? Now, comprehensible Mandarin. From the perspective of the experiment, I think the experiment stops shortly after they start speaking, many experiments, because the transition is so jarring. This is something you have to understand. So ALG is sold on the premise that it is the easiest method. And for the first 1,000 hours, if you're following the DS implementation of it, it is in a lot of ways the easiest method. You don't have to do any active thinking. And in fact, active thinking it's like actually not recommended at all. I know, crazy, but like that's the process. But then you get to speaking and it's like all the demons suddenly come to roost. Suddenly, this ain't easy anymore. It becomes extremely hard. And I'd say it becomes harder than a manual method because now your speaking, or your understanding has outpaced your speaking so much that you feel like everything you want to say, you can understand when someone's saying, but you can't say it. And it becomes very disheartening. So David Long said when he spoke Thai, it was total disaster. Marvin Brown considered that normal, that speaking would lag listening by 1,000 hours. So there's an example. That means I probably need 1,000 hours on top of what I'm doing to get my speaking up to my current level of listening, which, is probably like B1-ish plus maybe. I don't know. Like, because again, you can't really use the CFR because there's tons of like easy words I probably don't know. It's hard to say. I can watch Netflix, get the general gist, but when I turn on the subtitles, and I don't mean like subtitles, I mean CC closed caption subtitles, so much I don't understand. So it'd be nice to see someone document the journey, actually continuing through a few hundred hours of speaking practice. But from a personal perspective, you shouldn't feel obligated to torture yourself. You don't actually need Spanish, and you didn't start because you cared about the language itself, just testing DS. So you don't really have very compelling reason to carry on if you don't like it. I've seen a lot of people say this. The reason I'm so bad is because I don't care about Spanish. Actually, I want to talk a little bit about the experiment so far. When I started this experiment, and for the vast majority of it, it was for testing the experiment and the language was secondary, okay? It was basically, testing the methodology. However, since I started speaking, I actually want to speak this language. So it's not like I'm going to stop this experiment and stop the Spanish. I actually want to get good at Spanish now, just as much as I want to get good at Chinese, okay? And I think that in a lot of ways is the problem for me because now it's no longer just, do my daily grind, testing the methodology, because that's literally what I'm doing. I'm testing the methodology. It's, man, I want to speak Spanish. I want to speak Spanish with my friends. When I'm gaming, I don't want to be talking some freaking mixed version of English, Esperanto, and Spanish. I actually want to be doing Spanish. And then that pisses me off because I know I could have been speaking Spanish by now if I was doing anything else. Personally, I wouldn't worry about doing X amount of reading. The idea of ALG for speaking to emerge from listening, if reading, writing is an optional add-on. That is true. So that is a divergence between DS and ALG. So DS says you should start reading and speaking at the same time, but ALG itself says you should get good at listening, and once you get good at listening, then get good at speaking. Once you get good at speaking, then get good at reading. Like reading's meant to come after speaking. There's literally a natural order to things in ALG, but DS just throws that straight out the window. Which is why when I start reading while just starting to speak, people say I'm already failing at ALG because there is a divergence there, but we already spoke about that stuff in earlier videos. But maybe you're right that people would complain that you didn't do it right. They're already complaining. If you didn't hit the word count DS says, you know somebody's going to complain no matter what. Exactly. So it's like, I feel like I've probably impacted on the greatest amount of people this experiment can at this point. And just getting to 1,500 hours would just be more for me proving to myself that I can do something difficult. That'd be pretty much it. And that's the only reason I kind of think about doing it, is just so I can, you know, get that 1,500 hour, drop the video, and then with the playlist, rename it from Dreaming Spanish Review to Dreaming Spanish Review Complete. You know, just so I can just box that off happily, you know? That's the only reason. I have a question I'm curious about. When you talk about limited vocab, when I learned Spanish, there were so many cognates, thousands, and I found they were pretty straightforward to use once I heard them and knew they existed in Spanish. Have you found this not to be the case? So I've watched Comprehensible Mandarin's channel before, because obviously I'm studying Chinese, okay? And from my understanding, you live in Spain. I could be wrong about that, okay? And I think maybe that makes a difference because, yeah, I speak Esperanto, which gives me a ton of cognates, and English. However, I can hear those cognates, and the first time I hear them, I instantly know what they mean, but it doesn't mean I can say them. I have to manually force them out a few times, and once I've done that a few times, then they come to me. But it's the same as if I hear a cognate in Chinese. Like, I hear it, I understand it, I'm like, oh, okay. And then I still need to practice it a few times for it to come out. But the problem is, I can't artificially practice. I can't just sit there, you know, reading through a list of all the cognates, just saying them a couple of times to train my mouth. I have to try and, in some way, bring them up to active memory while in a conversation. There's the disconnect. It's like, I got all the understanding here, active speaking here, no connection between the two. And normally what I've found, you know, with Mandarin Chinese and Esperanto is that, you know, a little bit of practice, it initializes that connection. And then after I've initialized that connection, when I'm speaking in the future, it starts rolling out a lot more fluidly. But ALG doesn't allow that initialize of the connection through artificial practice, as in like, you know, repeat them in some sentences or something like that. I have to, in the moment, in a conversation with someone, somehow try pull these things out. And usually what happens, I found in crosstalk, is I'll be like, I'll say something, I'll be like, I forgot how to say this word. And then they'll say it and I'll be like, oh yes, that word. Yes. Mochila, mochila. You know, something like that. So that's pretty much how it's working for me at the moment. Okay, so there's a lot more comments on here about the experiment overall. And then there was a bunch of comments over on Dreaming Spanish. But most of them now are all coming down to the roadmap and how people are debating whether the roadmap is marketing material or not. And the crazy thing is, I remember early on in this series, and people can go back and find this if they want, I remember saying, I feel like the first couple of 100 hours are probably very accurate, and then everything after that point becomes marketing. And now that I'm at 1,150 hours, I 100% believe that. Because logically, it makes no sense. When I read through the descriptions of the roadmap, we've read through them in videos before, how are you able to speak when you're not even started speaking yet? Like, these things are just, there's just so many disconnects. And for those who have successfully completed the roadmap, it's usually they've had some type of experience at school or they've studied external to Dreaming Spanish, which is what I recommend, by the way. But the problem is the DS as a company overall is pushing the purist approach. Like, they have a great service, great quality content. I don't know why they're so set on their ways for the purist approach. Update the goddamn roadmap, okay? You can have two roadmaps. You can have one for the purists and then one for those who have done, you could give a rough estimate of, let's say 150 hours of Spanish study in some form or another, in Dreaming, or not in Dreaming Spanish, in Duolingo, at school, via Anki. It doesn't matter. Just say, like, if you've done 150 hours or so of prior study of Spanish, this is probably the roadmap for you. If you've done zero Spanish before, this is the roadmap for you, because realistically, the outcome for the two groups is vastly different. If you've got the foundations of Spanish grammar down, a couple of 100 words, especially the most common ones, bro, your experience is going to be so much different to someone who comes at this as a purist. And they do push the purist route constantly. And in fact, they're doubling down on it in their marketing materials. If they just dropped that, or at least split the roadmap into two, and just said, look, the purist approach is going to take you longer. You can add your bullshit ideas in there about, you're going to develop a more native like thinking and accent and stuff, because no one can really prove that shit anyway. You can keep that marketing stuff. So you could say that in your purist approach. And if someone then looks at it and goes, okay, well, it's 1,500 hours using a bit of a mixed methodology, but mainly CI. Yeah, okay, I'll take that route. Then they've got their information. But if someone looks at the purist route and they're like, okay, it's going to be like 2,000, 2,500 hours, because that's what we're talking about with speaking practice and, everything, just to try and catch up to those who have done some type of mixed approach. That person can make that choice with full knowledge and stop hiding shit like the fucking 1 to 3 million words. Is it required or is it not? Just say it. Like, why is it hidden away in an FAQ? Put it in the roadmap could easily be rewritten. I could take that whole thing, give it a couple of dot points, drop it in ChatGPT and say, hey, rewrite this to fit all this data that I've now collected on students. Because you got to know that they have a lot of student feedback now. Like, the Reddit is filled with posts. You could take all of those posts, run that through some AI model, or just hire someone to do some data analysis. And now you actually have proper information, including my own series, about what people can expect at each level. There is no reason why anymore they can't do that. Then there must be hundreds of cases at this point listed in Reddit, listed in YouTube videos, in my own series, that they can take this and actually, rather than guessing, because realistically it was all a guess based on Pablo's experience at the Thai school, okay? And you got to remember that was all in person, by the way. And then obviously he's got a Thai wife. Like, I don't fault the guy for making wrong guesses, but you can fix them now. You have the data. Don't tell me you haven't got the data. Why keep selling the bullshit unless the bullshit is actually part of the thing now? That's my only beef with the whole thing. I love Dreaming Spanish as a Service. I love the guides. I'm actually friends with one of the guides. I'm not going to drop names so he doesn't get fired. Too late. No, but like, my point being is, like, I got nothing against it overall. It's a fucking fantastic resource, but dead there in the middle of the page when you sign on is a roadmap. And I know tons of people in the Reddit, they try to, like, push that aside and be like, why you guys all care about the roadmap so much? I read it once and didn't look at it ever again. Because people follow a roadmap. It's a roadmap for a goddamn reason. And Dreaming Spanish says that this is the way you get fluent, okay? And now they've got the data, they've got no reason why they can't update that shit. Now, for those who are asking questions around Evildea, are you going to continue to the 1,500 hours? I will, for the next month, continue doing the ALG route, the DS implementation of the ALG route, okay? When I go over to China, I will continue doing that. I'm not going to do any speaking practice. When I come back, I'll make my final decision. I have actually, I want to give a shout out to Chema from Juego con Juarez, because he has done everything in his power to keep me on point, okay? So he has been so helpful. And yesterday I was doing a crosstalk session with him and he said, look, if you need to do more, I'm always available to do more time with you to help you out. If you want to change things around, just let me know. And so make sure you go over to his channel, hit sub. Fucking guy needs more subs. It's insulting how many subs he's got, guys. Like, go over to his fucking channel and hit sub, okay? And his Patreon, yeah, what is it? I can't remember, like 10 euros a month. Fucking endless content, amazing content, okay? Anyway, I want to talk about one minor change I already made with him. The change is a simple one. I said, now on, when I make mistakes, grammar mistakes, consistent grammar mistakes, just correct me. You don't have to tell me the grammar rules. Just say, no, in this instance, we always say this. And if I need a grammar clarification, he can clarify it. Okay, but it has to be in Spanish. That's the only change I've made so far. Now, technically, that breaks ALG in some ways, okay? Because I'll be like, oh no, you're thinking about the language now. That's wrong. But I have to do that, at least for my own sanity and progression. Which means by the 1,500 hours, the ALG people are going to use that against me. But they're going to use a bunch of other stuff against me anyway, so I don't give a fuck at this point. At this point, I'm just trying to only make minor modifications for anyone else who's following this route they want to know. And that is the one minor modification. I could modify and say, you know what, I'm going to start doing shadowing, but I won't. I'll start with just that over this month. Well, actually only over the couple of gaming sessions I'm doing. And then when I come back, I'll continue with that route. I think that will help a little bit, especially around fossilization of bad patterns, because I have noticed that I've been saying some stuff over and over that when pointed out to me, I was like, oh, okay, that's wrong, is it? Okay, I'll stop doing that. But I didn't realize until it was literally pointed out to me. So that's the only change I'm doing at this very moment. But we will decide when I'm back from China. So 3 weeks, I go over there. I'm over there for a month, then I come back. There will probably be a DS update while I'm over there. A bunch of you were talking about what I should do after the 1,500 hours, and heaps of you suggested I do something called language transfer, the complete audio course, which for, if we have a look around here, Spanish is, I think someone said it was like 80 hours long, and this made like a world of difference for them. So if by the 1,500 hours I'm not happy to continue with ALG, maybe that's what I'll test next. But if there is something that you guys recommend at that point, you can always let me know in the comment section. And these things go by demand. If there's a big demand for it, then that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video and my thoughts. And I'll see you all next video. If you're not there, I will find you and shave your legs. Don't know why, but I just noticed I'm graying.